Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Greet the Week. I'm Jan Moray, and I'm here with my co-host, Mona Duncan. Mona has chosen the topic for the week. Oh, and of course, welcome to all of our live guests. We always love to have live guests on here. Thank you for joining. And today's topic is random acts of faith. So we've all heard of random acts of kindness, but Mona's going to talk to us about random acts of faith. So get us started here, Mona.
Is it spelled fate or faith?
Faith, F-A-I-T-H.
Thank you.
Okay, well, there seems to be so much unrest and disagreement in our world today. And even with all of that, every once in a while, we hear of a random act of kindness that is truly outstanding. Matter of fact, the other day on TV, on the news, they had a man that was trapped in a burning car. And the fire department was there, and they were trying to extinguish the flame. And they had the jaws of life out to, trying to get into and pop things to get the roof off so that they could take this man out from inside the car. And there was a young man that was there, and he just went in with supernatural strength and somehow got the door open and literally pulled the man out.
Wow.
And saved him, I know. Dragged him out, saved his life. And it turns out that the individual that he pulled out was one of his arch rivals.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And it was just, then talking with him later, the reporters and everything, he couldn't give any reason as to why he risked his own life other than the fact that was someone that needed help. And he just felt that urge to do it. And he would not accept being a hero of anything. And it kind of goes back to the fact that deep down inside, we do value others.
Yes.
Even though we, disagree with and whether it's the rants that are on Facebook or in the news or just whatever. And so I got to thinking about all of this, and I was thinking of John Lewis, the civil rights leader that recently passed away. And he was the author of the book Across the Bridge. And he said that the question he was always asked the most is, how did you do it? How did you hold on to nonviolence in the face of all of that violence? Now, that's really violence, okay? But sometimes we can become almost nonviolent or even violent in just disagreements.
It's amazing how those emotions can build up over little bitty insignificant things, and all of a sudden you're feeling this rage. And when you can step back and look at it, you're like, how did that happen?
Right. And so he said the question that he was asked the most was, how did you do it? How did you hold your peace in the midst of all that nonviolence? And his answer, faith.
Okay.
Faith has power. And I wrote down something that he said, but I didn't bring it over here with me, so hold on just a second. He said, faith has power. Few would disagree with the idea that faith has power. This often does not become meaningful until it is tested by a challenge that we may not survive. It is then that we experience how transformative our capacity to believe truly is. That we have that capacity to believe. And he said, even as a child, that all too often the need and the resources, they just didn't match. And his mom would say, we'll make a way where there is no way.
Yeah.
And that became his life example. And I remember one time that a coworker and I had a little ongoing friction with one another. And I was beginning to learn what I am practicing more and more every day. And to, take the high road, even though. And anyway, one day she said something along the line of, I think I've misunderstood you, and I'm going to work on listening.
Wow, that was big.
I know. I know, I know. And I remember I turned to her and I said, you know what? I'm going to believe you. And that did something in me that I began to see her in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
And so somewhere down through the years, I have come up with my trifecta of faith, because what is faith? I want to believe it's looking forward to something that hadn't happened yet. So I came up with the three ingredients, and one is desire. Kind of write it out. What is it you desire? What is it you want to do? What is it you want to be? And then believe it. Do you believe you can do it, or is that just a fairy tale that's out there to get along with someone that's not so easy to get along with? Do you really believe you can if you put some work into it? So it's belief, which is desire, and it's to believe, and then it's to expect it, and not to expect it as if, because I'm so cute, somebody's supposed to just do everything for me. To begin to expect it is then you begin to look for it, to see if there's any change in you and them in the situation at all. And then beginning to trust those things.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I can believe that. I mean, that resonates with me, that would be very important to move forward.
Yeah. And so, it's for some of the examples that I gave in the little blurb for today, it's trusting that your child really does respect you and love you.
Yeah. Though it may not feel that way, but I trust it, right?
Exactly. The thing of it is, as to grow away from is the natural part of life. And a girl and I watched a movie the other night, and we had in it this rebellious teenager, and the parents were getting some counsel, and they were working together on really overcoming all of this, and there were times when mom began to lose faith and dad stepped in, and there was times when dad began to lose faith and mom stepped in. But it's really believing that, our kid really does love us.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And
No, thinking about that reminds me of when I was going through my, bout of depression and was offered, antidepressants, and I just refused to take them. And about that time, I had also found out about Dr. Glasser and reality therapy and choice theory. And I believed, all of the stuff that Dr. Glasser wrote just resonated so well to me. And I believed in him so much and I wanted to be able to get through it without having to take any medication. So it's, your trifecta thing where I had the desire to get through it without the meds. I believed in it, so much. And I just kept moving forward and kept, trusting that was what had to be done in order for me to get through it. And I fired my therapist and I did. I said, I don't want anybody pushing drugs on me. And I read 7 or 8 of Dr. Glasser's books and had it all come together. And I really think that's what pulled me through, but it was the belief in it. And then in my life, anything that happened that, did not sit well with me, I'd have to go back to the basics and say, okay, how do I handle this and how do I move forward? So, but I think it's having that belief in it, because it's so easy to throw it away and say, well, it's not working, because things take time and you have to have patience and you have to really want to make it work. And the belief that it can work helps push you through. Of course, it's nice to have somebody else there to remind you when you're losing that faith to get you back on track.
Right. And to not get upset with them because they're reminding you.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing with, your chosen career or your chosen mate or your chosen what. There was something there. There's something there.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying that doesn't ever mean that it's not an absolute. And we're going to get to that in a minute, that we can never be certain of absolutes. And sometimes we want to say something's an absolute when it isn't. just believing in that person. I know Garland and I have been married for 53 years, and there's sometimes I'm still astounded at that. Because we are so opposite. And when we begin to discuss things, I think about that couple that does a lot of presenting on Meet the Press, that they are so diverse in their husband and wife, and yet they are so diverse. One's a Republican, one's a staunch Democrat, staunch Republican, and they are all for their parties. And I mean, they go head to head to head to head, but it's in giving information from their point of view.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they still, they openly talk when people talk to them about the fact that, yeah, they have a good relationship, even though they're so diverse. And it can happen, but it takes
It really can.
Yeah. And part of that is, the fact that anything that's appreciated goes up in value. And I know one of the things with Garland and I both, we thank each other. We notice little things, and we make comment about it in a positive manner. And I like to think that I was the generator of that, but you know what? I don't know. I don't have any.
But it's been working for you too, and so you worked on that, and that's become the way you do things, right?
Right. And Dr. Glasser does say that when only one begins to change, it's such a dynamic effect on others. Because
well, I think it goes back to those relationship habits, one changing. I think if you try to get rid of those disconnecting habits and just start working on a connecting habit, and no matter what the other person says, that you're trying not to get dragged into the negative part, that it does make a difference, and it does change the dynamic of the relationship.
Right, it does. And to, just be aware of the fact that we can never be certain of absolutes, even though we may have put some, and we may not have even realized that we have made it an absolute. So it kind of goes back to examining our own thinking. And I say that the fact that we can't even trust our own eyes because of our perception. Have you ever seen something one way and found out that it was completely a different way?
Yeah.
That our perception.
Oh, I've done that so many times when I've read something and I get a certain attitude or belief out of what I read, and then I go back and read it again. It's like, well, where is that thing that I read? I know it was in here somewhere. And then it's like, how did I get that idea? But I guess it had to do with what I was thinking about at the time and what I wanted it to say.
Exactly. Whether that's an email from someone or a letter or whatever, you may think it's being very derogatory, and you looked at it, it's just plain old information.
Mm-hmm.
And but in the book is God a Mathematician by Mario Livio. Right here on the very back it says, one of the people that was giving an intro to it, it says, theologians have God, philosophers existence, and scientists mathematics. Mario Livio makes the case how all three of these might be related. Well, that drew me into reading this book. And it is so wonderful because he looks in there. He started out with Pythagoras and Plato and Aristotle, and how that those then their students began to believe that, it's all Aristotle, it's all Plato, it's all Pythagoras. That things, and Aristotle began to define some things. I mean, we think of Newton and learning and defining gravity and all that, but it's not as though no one had ever thought of that before, although we may not give anyone credit except Newton. But Aristotle began to look and see things falling, and he thought things fell, like an apple or nuts off a tree or whatever, that they were falling because they were trying to return to the center of the earth. And we may think, oh, ha, 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 how funny, how crazy. But yet there's something in all of those thoughts, what someone else is thinking. And we are more alike than we are different. And then we go on down to Copernicus and his ideas of the galaxy, and Galileo, and looking at, one of his thoughts through all of that was to listen to nature. It was just to listen to nature, to listen to what the atmosphere is telling you, what what the smoke in the air, what the whatever. Just listen to it, hear it. And David Bohm and Einstein. David looks at hidden variables. Einstein looked at relativity. And there for a while they became disengaged. And now the world as a whole is looking back at maybe David Bohm and his hidden variables. There was something to it, that they were at odds with each other, and yet they respected one another enough to begin to learn more from the other person. And so it's just looking at the fact that always be on the lookout for the presence of wonder. And that's kind of that expectancy. It's
So
not
the presence of wonder. So is that, you said the presence?
Yeah. Always be on the lookout for the presence of wonder. Now that little axiom right there is given to, is acknowledged to have been formed by E.B. White, and another place it was to have been formed by a guy named Lowenstein. But whoever said it, it's beautiful. Always be on the outlook for the presence of wonder. And so back up with my trifecta of desire, come out, look at what you desire, and have faith in it, and then the expectancy. Now that expectancy is not to draw a map, or it's not to take a picture that it has to be exactly like this. Mm-hmm. It's not to give it an answer. Just it's to live in the mystery. This is, and as you begin to see something different that kind of goes hand in hand with that faith that you have, with that belief that you have, then it would be, it's kind of like something that's giving you some assurance that maybe we're on the right direction, that maybe the right attitude is being formulated. So in thinking about that, how many times do you, back to our perception, that we don't see what we think we see, and we don't hear what we think we hear, and sometimes we hear something for the first time and we think that maybe the person that said it was the originator of it.
Yeah.
And we maybe give them credit for it because they were the speaker that was speaking at that moment, but it wasn't them at all. I mean, how many things.
Well, sometimes you don't even know where the idea came from.
Exactly. Exactly. So one morning, in thinking about all that, I just wrote down this little poem, and I know there's going to be more to it, but it hadn't come yet. And that is, when I give credit where credit is due, and I like to do that. Being a writer myself, I don't want someone taking my ideas without giving me credit for it. Mm-hmm. But when I give credit where credit is due, that takes me all the way back to you. And the you I'm thinking about is the mystery of this universe. Source of all life, infinity, grant us love, kindness, and creativity. And that as we go back to the original source, as what's his face said, the Galileo, listen to nature. As we go back to as we can listen to our wisdom heart rather than our ego mind. Mm-hmm. Because all too often, we are we strip things down. When we can strip things down to the core, life becomes more simple. Dr. Rachel Raymond works with patients. The patients that she works with she's worked with a lot of patients that have had near-death experiences.
Okay.
And she made the comment that those that have had that near-death experience seem to grow in wisdom and in love, and in a better way to love. That they seem to narrow it down to one purpose in life, and that is to grow in wisdom.
If you've had a near-death experience, you get a whole new appreciation for life, knowing that you were so close to having it taken away from you. And so I would imagine, I mean, I knew a guy who had a heart attack and was revived from it, and said the only sense, he could still hear what was going on. He couldn't move. He couldn't open his eyes. He couldn't signal to the doctors that he was alive, but he could hear what they were saying, and really, really understood how close he was to dying. And I would just think that something like that gives you a whole new appreciation of in wanting to be grateful for what you do have and the people who are in your life. And yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah. My brother was kind of similar to that. He didn't really have a near-death experience, but he had a 5-way bypass, and that was back before you could, I mean, that was when the chest cut open and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And that had such a dramatic change on his life.
Yeah.
That, that it was so severe, and he would just, he just became kind of like that, growing in wisdom and learning to love better.
Yeah.
That whenever you begin to have a single purpose in life, that some of these things, and it goes back up to what John Lewis's mom would say: "We'll make a way out of no way."
Yeah.
That we can begin to find a way. Doesn't seem like there's a way, but there is. If there's something there that we can.
We have that belief, that faith that it's going to happen. Let's not get all frustrated and feeling like the end is near. Okay, well, what do we want? Let's keep moving forward. Let's make it happen. Because we're a lot more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. And there's a lot that we can do. A lot we can't do, but there's a lot of things that we can do to make a difference.
Exactly. And it's like John Lewis said, that faith, all that, how much power we have, and power and faith doesn't become meaningful until it's tested by a way that really challenges us to test it. Whether it is to take a med, not take a med, be kind, to not be kind, to speak up. Sometimes it takes that faith to speak up and to set a boundary.
Yeah.
Because, I've mentioned many times before, I'm never talking about giving in to someone that harms you, that leads to abuse or to degradation. Never that. Sometimes it's having enough faith in yourself to speak up and to say something, to set a boundary.
Yeah, that's real hard. I know we've talked about it before. It's really hard to do that.
It's
sometimes.
not easy.
It's not, but if you can think about what the end result is that you want, and which way it's going to get you there. If you continue to allow the abuse, is that going to get you there?
Yeah, and that expectancy is, what do I need to do? How do I need to change my stance, my attitudes, it's working within me, because I cannot make the other person see anything differently. I just can't. And so confusion, we often get confused in all these things. Confusion comes, I think, when we go with our ego mind as opposed to listening to our wisdom heart, because it will really lead us in the way that is good for all concerned. And sometimes it is to have an initial rest, to regroup, to rethink, to give some space. And so, in looking at all this, now we're getting down close to time to close, is to looking at one of the principles in lead management. And one of that is just to imagine, just to play like, just to think, to really imagine that the person that you are training, that you're working with, that is not in keeping with the dictates of the, because lead management, for those of you that may not be familiar with that, is the way to help your employees really put an interest in helping the overall company to become successful, and to kind of to buy into what their particular job is, rather than to be rogue and do anything that would not meet the goals of the organization. And so is to imagine the fact that we, the people, are getting it, as in being more kind, that we the people are setting an environment of welcoming, a good to see you attitude with a relaxed demeanor that invites cooperation rather than invites the pushback. The job description is discussed as well as the employee's understanding of his commitment to the company. They're asked to do their best and to view their individual job as important to the overall outcome in the running of the business. We could begin to look at that as life in general. They're asked to self-evaluate their ability, their willingness, and their follow-through on request. The employee is asked to make suggestions as to how things can be improved, and the employer is asked to listen to, at least consider, share, open ideas, kind of an even exchange, so that we can see, and even if we're in an impasse, it's still to hold the other person in high regard.
Right. That's so important there. You're going to disagree with people. You're going to disagree with your spouse, your boss, your kids. It's just, if you don't, there's something wrong, actually, because there are going to be times when you don't agree, and to be able to agree to disagree and to be able to discuss each side without thinking poorly of the other person it's tough, but it's so important to keep that relationship going, and you learn to respect that other person so much more by allowing them to say what they want to say, and by being able to discuss the differences without getting too angry.
Right. And to let that sharing of information be a learning team and atmosphere.
Right. Yeah.
And continue, like I say, to hold the other in high regard, and to see each person's unique insights and skills, and to just have faith, and to perform that random act of faith. I'll give you faith that we can work together, that we can work this out, that we can live in the same neighborhood, the same country, the same universe, and peace to all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And trusting, that belief, that faith, that love does prevail.
Yeah. So let's go back to your trifecta in case people didn't get it all, to close up for today.
Okay, the trifecta is the outcome is faith, but here's the ingredients, is desire. Just really think about, what is it that you desire for what kind of a person do you want to be? What is your belief about it? Is it just something that you're saying, I can do that, but the reality is you're not about to, and deep down in your wisdom heart, you know that? So it's looking at what your desire is and what you can believe about it. Do you honestly believe that you could get along with someone better if you really worked at it? Mm-hmm. Do you really believe that someone could get along with you a little bit more if, but do you really believe that they could?
Right.
Not that you're writing the script for it or anything. Okay, it's just, do you really believe that it's possible? And then have an expectancy for, what, I'm going to watch and see. I'm going to look for it. I'm going to see if there's anything that's beginning to show me that I have put my faith in something that will take root and grow. It's like the kid that, you tell them to take the garbage out, take the garbage out, take the garbage out. And so finally, one day they take the garbage out without being asked to. Mm. And instead of saying, well, it's about time, you say, oh, thanks.
Right.
That's an expectancy thing. Whereas, and then that faith is looking forward. It hadn't happened yet, but can I see any little nuances that it's about to?
Moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that topic today, Mona. Thanks to everybody who joined us live, and for those of you who see this later, and we'll be back next week for another edition of Truth the Week.